With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Are you looking to have a deeper relationship with the animals in your life? As an animal communicator since 2013, Denise has been helping people understand their animal's behavior, gaining perspective on the animal's point of view or opinion about daily routines, unexpected events, or life's big changes. She has provided information for owners to take to their vets or trainers to help resolve issues, and has contacted animals that have passed out of body and into spirit. Often, just the conversation and understanding of everyone's perspective on an issue begins to change the situation for the better. Denise can be found at oneanima.com. That's ONEANIMA.com, or call 503-236-3281.
As a human, I am humbled and feel privileged when other species on this planet wish to be part of my world.
So on this episode of Into the Fray, I welcome back author and podcaster James Salsido. This is actually his fifth visit to Into the Fray. Parts 1 to 4 were titled The Darkness Rises. And that is in direct correlation with one of the books that he has published. He has published several books on the paranormal that range from fiction to nonfiction, including the recently released Salsido Paranormal Experiences, and he hosts and produces the podcast Salsido Paranormal Podcast. James, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, as always.
Yeah, we've got several different things to speak about. And I mean, honestly, you have had essentially a lifetime of paranormal experiences. And so that was, of course, your inception into this whole thing, right?
Yeah, definitely started with experiences back when I've said before I was like 12, but I think it was more like I was 13 or 14. But as I always say in all these interviews, I'm terrible with remembering time and all that. So anyone that wants to try to catch me in anything, it's not going to work because I don't remember. That's as simple as that. So if I say something different from one show to another, yeah, you're probably right that I said something different. It's because I'm just doing my best to remember these things as I go and as time goes on. So, but I think the experiences are the more important thing, at least to me anyway.
I'm the same way. If someone goes, oh, what year did you do this trip or that trip? I'm like, I don't know. It was a few years ago. I'm absolutely horrible with stuff like that too. So I just try to keep it very, very general. I'm like, I don't know. Is it that important? Probably not. Okay, so let's talk about, first of all, your recently released book, right? What made you decide to go ahead and write another book?
Well, I really wanted to do a book that was directly connected to my podcast because I've been one of the major things I do on my podcast is I go online and I find in various forums accounts of people's experiences. Actually, funny enough, I hear a lot of like good and bad back and forth about Reddit, but there are so many posts on Reddit about all these experiences people have. And because for me, because I'm legally blind, I live on a fixed income, I can't go out and physically meet with people and to get their stories of their experiences, or to go and visit locations myself to have my own experiences so much. It's very rare. I have to do it with family or whatever, and which is always amazing, but it just doesn't work out that often. So, but I found there's just so many accounts, and they're being added every day on different websites. A lot of it I use as Twitter, not Twitter, Reddit. There we go. And I just wanted to share some of those experiences, and then also sort of put down as many of my own experiences as I could remember in a book, and finally get that out, because with The Darkness Rises, I only shared a few of my experiences. And so I wanted to try to get everything out as well as I could of my own in one book. and at least up to whenever I finish the book. And then include some of the material that I've read on the show in the book, just to kind of connect the two projects or the two things that I do to each other.
Well, let's hop right in because we have several different types of things to talk about today. And let's hop right in with this possible alien abduction experience.
Yeah, so this happened not too long before my second visit to that training center that we talked about in a previous episode that had all kinds of paranormal activity. The training center for people with low vision or no vision. And it took talking with friends. I'm very lucky. I have a lot of friends I talk with on Discord, and even more so back in like 2020, 2021, this couple of years there, everyone was online a lot more, for obvious reasons there. And it took talking with friends to realize there might have been a connection with this experience and things that happened after. So at this point, this was about 12, 13, maybe 14 years ago again. I'm 42 now, so this was a little while back. That's not that long. Yeah, because I guess I've been in this apartment now for like 17, almost 18 years. Something around there, give or take a couple years either way, with anything I say here, as I was just saying earlier. But I was sleeping at the time. I just had a couch for a bed, which was fine. It was a nice big couch. And I went to sleep late one night or early one morning. It was dark out. And I woke up or half woke up. I don't even know exactly how to describe it. I just realized that I wasn't laying on my couch anymore. I was on a flat surface. And I opened my eyes, and that's all I could move was my eyes. And so I was looking around, and I noticed I was in a room that was obviously not my living room. It had the walls were a solid, like a blue, I think like a darker blue, and then there were these white cabinets or shelves built into the walls, and it looked like they had electronics on them. Not anything with screens, but more like just, I don't know, hard drives or systems, but nothing to look at on those devices. And I couldn't move. And when I looked straight up, I could see it was either just a really bright light that was hiding the ceiling, or that's what the ceiling was. I don't know for sure with that. And I couldn't move. And I noticed there was these two or three gray blurs, not quite grays in the traditional sense, but these figures or blurs that were just gray. That was all I could see of them, slowly moving around the table. And I was trying to figure out why I couldn't move and where I was and what was going on. And at that point, I heard my parents' voices off to one side. They were both telling me everything was okay, but there was no emotion in their voices. And when I looked, I just saw two more blurs, two more of these gray blurs. And so I knew it wasn't them. And as I was doing all this, I noticed there was something above me, either in the ceiling or coming from the ceiling, and it was slowly coming down toward me. And eventually I realized it was like a robotic arm extension kind of device. And of course, it had a needle at the end of it. And I was freaking out because it was a needle. I had no idea what it was for. But I noticed it was heading toward my head. And I was trying to move and looking all around and seeing these blurs slowly moving around. And eventually, the needle came down and touched my left eye. And that's when I just, everything went black. I panicked. And then next thing I know, I wake up in my couch where I had been asleep at before. And I don't know how to explain that. I wrote it off at the time as just hopefully, possibly being a really vivid dream, even though, again, I felt things. I felt this table, bed, whatever it was beneath me. And I definitely felt something touch my left eye. And so I wrote it off for quite a while. But years later, I was talking with friends and telling them about this, and they also, at that point, knew about the issues I'd been having with my eyes getting worse as far as eye strain and light sensitivity. Guess when all that started? It was not long after this experience. So, did it cause that? Did it not? If it didn't, then that's quite the coincidence. And I don't know what exactly that was. I have a hard time putting anything down to being any one thing at this point when it comes to all these experiences, because I think there are so many similarities between different kinds of experiences, and the interaction between, let's say, a person's mind and any other intelligence and all that energy and all that. I think there's so much we don't know about that. So I don't know for sure if it was an alien abduction experience. I don't even know if it was an abduction experience. I don't know if it was physical or not. It felt physical, but I just, as with all this, I have no idea. But the timing of that is really odd, and it's something I'm still dealing with to this day, with the eye strain and the light sensitivity, to the point where I actually figured out that when it gets really bad, I get vertigo, and luckily I've found medicine that can help with the dizziness that comes from that. But yeah, so this thing happened, and I didn't think about it at the time, and then I started having these problems, and it took talking with friends about this to figure out maybe there was some kind that was the cause possibly of all that.
So, James, is your left eye in fact worse than the right one?
No, it's actually better. It's slightly better
Hmm.
than the right, and it always has been. So I don't know what that means. I never got up off of that table. It's not like I feel like I escaped. So if that was what happened, then if that was a real experience, then it seems like whoever they were, they did what they wanted to do, whatever it is they did. But I have no idea for sure what that was.
And nothing else like that experience, at least to your
No,
conscious knowledge, has ever happened again.
that's correct. Yeah, no, never before, never after.
And what about family members? I mean, I'm sure that this has come up in our past talks, but it's always worth bringing up again. Do your family members have experiences with anything strange, including similar to what you just mentioned?
Nothing like that. Nothing to do with any kind of possible alien or abduction or any of that stuff. Not, no, I've never heard of anything like that. I have talked before about experiences my family had at my what used to be my grandparents' house, and a few experiences that I can't remember if I shared that one on the show or not. But one of my older sister had an experience here in my apartment one time. But yeah, a few people in the family have had more of what you would might classify as ghost or paranormal experiences, but nothing like that I've ever heard. No.
Although, in some cases, as you well know, some of these things tend to look like another phenomenon. And whether that's on
Yes.
purpose or not, who knows? But that is the case sometimes.
Yes, and that's why I say what I say about that, which is that I have no idea what that was for sure. I can only report, as I always do, what everything seemed to be, as far as I could tell.
And I can't remember, it's been a long time since I've watched this episode, but when you watch Travis Walton's retelling of what occurred to him, he will tell you that if you watch the episode of the TV show Paranormal Witness, it was actually a very well done show just in general, but he says that's the closest thing to what actually happened to me. If you watch the movie Fire in the Sky, what you just described is very similar to a scene that they put in that movie, and I cannot recall if that is part of what he says actually happened to him. It's been so long now, but irregardless, I mean, we've heard other people talk about the very same experiences, right? Being on these cold metal tables and they're surrounded by these strange figures or creatures, whatever they want to call them, beings. And the fact that while you're there, they're trying to make you feel better by mimicking your parents' voices is really creepy.
Yeah, definitely. And I've never even seen the actual movie Fire in the Sky. I don't watch movies like I used to before the my eyes started changing, and I wasn't as quite as into the topics as I am now. So I was aware of the actual experience of the Travis Walton story. I go back and forth on using that word. His experience, because to me, they can be true stories, but then if I say just story, then
Right.
to me, I don't. Anyway, but I've heard of that experience, but I never actually saw the movie, the fictionalized movie. But it's amazing how often you hear about that. People have experiences, even though they've never seen a movie or a TV show or read an account of it or read a novel or a story where something similar happened, and it came up before they had their experience.
So, next, let's talk about places that you have visited in dreams prior to actually being there in person. And it's obviously the same place.
Yeah, so I did go over one of those experiences in the previous one of my previous appearances. That was that college or trade school with the arrowhead shapes along the wall.
Yeah.
So I had that experience, but I've also had several others. I had one where I was in this very small room and there was just a desk or a table with a chair in the back of it, and then a wall with a window, and I could see like street light coming in through the window. And this was, I don't know, when I was in my early teens or so. Well, several years later, and it seemed like it was at night. Everything was dark in this dream or this experience. Several years later, I volunteered to do some kind of work experience kind of project through school where I actually went to an office and did some minor work there with filing and paper shredding and just to have that experience. Well, this one day, I one of the people there asked me to take a file, a folder, over to another person and told me where to go and everything. And I went there. Now in this office, they have so many filing cabinets. They've stacked them up and lined them up to make fake walls. Kind of that's the thing there where they just make their own walls out of these cabinets. And so I was told where to go among all these cabinets, and I entered this space in between the two cabinets, which is like a doorway kind of thing. And I look, and it's a little tiny room, just like I had seen in that dream, with a table and a chair and a window behind it. And of course, there's someone sitting there when I'm there with the file. And I hand it to them, and I had to make myself leave, like before I just stood there for a few minutes because it was that same room. I just hadn't noticed in the dream that the walls were made of filing cabinets because it was dark. But everything else was the way it had been in the dream, except this was happening in the daytime and that dream was at night. And I had never been in this office. This was actually a government office. So it's not like people can just go in there without some kind of business or reason to be in there, especially in the back part of the office. And so that was one of the first ones I had happen. The Some of the other ones involved dreams of two different locations that my family and I visited on these public paranormal investigation events. So this first one, I had a couple different dreams about it at different points when I was a kid and young teens, maybe around there, maybe a little bit older. And the first, well, I don't remember which one was first now actually, but I had two different dreams. One, I was in this room with concrete floor, and it seemed to be an empty room and had doorways, a few different doorways. And I was looking around and there was no one there, and it was like it was morning, just like early morning. The sun was coming up. I could see light coming in through the windows that were near the ceiling in this room, but that was all I could see of it. And then I had this other dream about going up these two steps and into a room, and the steps were wooden and the walls were brick. And I walked into this room, and but it was dark. Everything was dark, and I walked into another room. I barely remember that part. I just remember more being in that other room. And I noticed it was again the walls were brick. I could see the bricks in the walls because of light coming in from outside, and just a little bit. And I could see there was this oval shaped object on the floor, and I didn't know what it was, but it was flat. There was nothing really there. So years later, I found out about this public investigation of a house in the small town right next to where I live, and I wanted to go to this thing because of course, by this point, this was, let me see here, about 10 years ago, and I'd heard about these kinds of events. This group, I'm not sure if they're still around now. They were called the Motor City Ghost Hunters, and what they would do is they would work with locations that were historical, and they would have events there where you would buy a ticket to go there. But all the proceeds from the tickets sales would go to the upkeep and renovation of the property itself, which I really thought was an amazing thing to do because some of these places, often they've been left alone for how many ever years or decades, and they're starting to fall apart for whatever reason. And so I wanted to go to this investigation, and my family, a few of them wanted to go with me, and so we all went. And we get there, and it's actually a really neat house. It's an octagon shaped house, and not super huge, just 2 stories in a basement. But it was, so we went there, and it was a adults only kind of event, just for adults that time. The group did do other like children's events too here and there, but anyway, so got there and we went in, and they had everyone go to the basement, and they had all this room at the bottom of the stairs set up with folding chairs in it. And I was looking around this room, and I realized, oh, I've been in this room before in a dream. It just looked different because it had all these chairs in it. And so I filed that away because this was not my first experience with that kind of a thing. And the group did their introduction and everything, and then they split everyone up into 2 large groups, and one went up to the second floor, and and we were led into this other room. Now, as the investigators are leading us in this doorway, I noticed there were these 2 wooden steps leading up into this room with brick walls. And we went into the rest of the room, the other major part of the room, and again, more brick walls. I could see more because the lights were on then. And there was this big oval shaped rug in the middle of the floor in this room where we set up for the first part of the investigation. And the amazing thing about that night, there was a few things that happened here and there. People saw lights at the opposite end of the room behind where I was sitting. But at one point, we heard a little girl talking and laughing on the ground floor. Now, like I said, this was an adult-only event, and the other group was on the second floor. So I don't know, other than faking, which I don't think the group did. I never got that impression from them. Other than some kind of trick, it seemed like there was this voice coming down from the ground floor, and we all heard it. And couldn't make out words, but we definitely heard the laughing. So that was the first couple that sort of tied my out of body experiences to the paranormal, to actual, somewhat, I don't want to say actual investigations, because I think it's different when you have a huge group and you're checking a place out, but paranormal events anyway.
I mean, I just find it pretty incredible that, and I'm sure that you've thought about this, you might have diminished physical sight, but it seems like your other sight is so heightened.
Yeah, yep, and definitely. So over the years in between sort of those first couple of dreams and then going to that first investigation, I had other dreams of other locations. And so there was three different ones. I had this dream about being in a hallway and there was a table and two chairs in front of me and with a brick wall behind it, but the rest of the walls were painted, plaster or whatever. And I walked toward the table and I looked to the left and I could see a doorway, but it was dark outside and I could see some street light coming in. I looked to the right and I could see a into a room with several tables and chairs, like a dining room. And one of that room, it was all windows. It was just like a window wall. So that was the first dream I had associated with this next event. Another one I had not long after that was of a small kitchen in a house, and I was walking through there, walked into a dining room, and the dining room had, it was either four or six, I can't remember now, of these tables, but instead of chairs at the tables, they had benches, and it was all wooden tables and benches. And I thought that was kind of odd, and that dream ended. A lot of these, they start and then they just end for whatever reason. There's no obvious reason for them to end. They just, that's how that goes, I guess, with these some of these out of body experiences when you're not controlling them. And so I had that dream. The other one I had was being in what seemed like an old house to me, an old single level house, and all of the wood, the frame and the wood walls and the floors was all exposed. And I walked from one room to another room, and I could see a couple of the windows, and they had that. I don't know what you call it, and I always forget to look this up beforehand. It's a regular window, but it has like a wood grid shape on it
Mm-hmm.
of just thin wood, whatever.
Yeah.
And I saw a couple of those windows and just looked around, and then that faded. So years later and years after that first octagon house that we went to, we found out, my family and I found out about this other investigation that same group was doing at a lighthouse in Port Huron, which is a town not too far from me. It's on the coast of Michigan, St. Clair. It's actually right by the bridge that goes over to Canada. And so there's this lighthouse. It's called the Fort Gratiot Light Station, I believe. And so we found out about this investigation and decided to go. And when we get there, we were told to go into this house. It was a duplex for the light keepers and their families, lighthouse keepers and their families originally. And we walk into this house and it's a kitchen, a small kitchen. And everything is exactly like that small kitchen I saw years earlier in a dream. And I've already messed this up. But anyway, I'll get back to the other things. And we walk into the dining room where we're all supposed to sit down for the introduction to the whole night. And we get to the dining room and it's tables and these wooden benches, just like I had seen in that one dream. Investigation that night, we went to a restaurant not far from the location. And we walk in there and I realized I was seeing that same table and chairs and that brick wall from another angle. I had been standing in one hallway in this dream, but then when we got there, we came in through one of the side entrances there. And we walk into the restaurant and it's all these wooden tables and chairs. And of course, they have the full size window wall to the side that I had seen in my dream. So you have two of the three dreams here that I'm going to talk that I talked about. So we go from, there's a few different buildings in this complex here that we visited, and the last one that we visited that night was an old hospital, but it was not like a modern one. It was a small, older building, and they were still working on renovating it. So when we walked in, it was all just the bare wood frames and floors and everything of this hospital. And we walked in, and then we walked into the second room, and it was that same room with the same windows that I had seen in a dream. So I had 3 different dreams at 3 different times over the years about 3 different places that were close to each other that I visited in one night in person on a paranormal investigation. So explain to me how that works.
So, have you ever tried to execute an OBE on purpose, James?
A couple of times, just briefly, I sort of went to sleep thinking I would like to try it and just stay in my apartment because every time I've ever had an OBE, I've never found myself in my own home, except maybe once, but that could have been a regular dream.
Right. But those are all accidental, right?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, every time I ever go out, I'm way away from home. I'm not at home. So
That's kind of
I
freaky,
don't
right?
know.
And then, you got that whole
Yeah.
thing where you've got the silver umbilicus that you're not supposed to go too far because then you can never get back, right? Do you put stock in that? Do you think that's true?
I can't discount it because I've heard of people that have had experiences with it. So I don't know how or why I ended up going as far away as I did. Not that I've ever gone super far as far as I know. Like I've never gone out of the state of Michigan or
Right.
things like that. But then again, I've never really, except for I guess once when I was a little kid. So I wouldn't know until I do go out of Michigan and it happens again where I remember a dream, I guess. So, but yeah, I don't know why some people when they have out of body experiences, they're right there by their body when they go out, and why others don't. And I mean, I think sleep and dreams and that state of consciousness is just it's such an easy gateway into so many other realms. I think that who knows how that works.
I wonder if you get good enough at OBEs and astral travel and all that, if you can be like, hey, can I upgrade my umbilicus and get the pay for the extension cord, so I can go further? Like what the heck, man? I mean, I am fascinated by that, and that subject does come up sometimes on all of these types of situations. People are like, well, yeah, I've had this, and then there was this one time, and they could swear, right? Like they were actually where they're saying that they can describe, just like you just did, right? And they're going, how in the actual hell would I know what that place looks like if I've never been there and I can describe to you every detail of what it looks like?
Yeah, and I wonder. It's funny. I've never been like really far away from home in terms of never being out of the state in an out of body experience. But one of the things I mentioned when we were exchanging emails is I've I'm 99% sure I have also I don't even know what you would call this out of body experience journey to another alternate parallel universe, if that's a thing. It seems like it might be based on some experiences. So that's probably a good place to transition into if you'd like.
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead, James.
Okay. So I think I was having these for a little while before I realized what they were. I've always had dreams of finding myself in houses that I'm familiar with, whether it's my grandparents' house, my aunt and uncle's house, the one where I had my first experiences. But over the years, this is more recent, like the last less than 10 years or so, I've also had dreams of places that where I used to live. So my what used to be it's basically my former stepdad's house now. He still lives there, but for a while years ago, it was him and then my mom and then their daughter, which would be my sister, and I that live there. So I've had dreams of houses that I've lived in or stayed in for long periods of time. But in these dreams, everything feels slightly different. One of the wildest ones I had that first tipped me off to this was I was in that house and I was with my mom and former stepdad. I think that's the correct way to say it. I don't know for sure because they divorced years ago. And of course my sister that I know, but there were two other girls there that looked similar to her. It was like instead of having the one daughter, my mom had three at different points in time. That has not happened here. And like I said, she's not even with that same guy. She's not even with that guy, the father. So that's not an accurate situation here at all. But in this experience, I was perfectly at home with everyone there, including these other two girls. And it was just I woke up and I remember thinking, that's odd. That's not a memory. That's felt that felt like more than just a regular dream. So what was that? And at this point, I've been listening to all these different shows, your show included, and whatever other shows I could find on all these topics. And then I had a dream about being in a house that used to belong to my dad and my former stepmom. Because after my parents divorced when I was really little, years later they found other people and got married, and then eventually got divorced as well. But I was in this house and I was with my dad and my former stepmom, and there were other people there, and I recognized the house, but it still looked kind of different. But not only that, it seemed like the people there, including my dad and my former stepmom, they seemed slightly different in the way they were acting and their personalities. Not like in a really bad way, but just different. And this happened finding myself in these houses. It's happened once every year, every other year since then. So now the one that gave me confirmation, if possible confirmation on this idea of sort of a other multiverse kind of traveling idea, is I found myself one day when I went to sleep. I found myself back in that house again where I used to live with my mom and her former husband and their daughter. And I was asleep in the living room, and I woke up in this dream, and I knew I was in this house, but I was also kind of groggy, like I had just woken up. And my mom came down the stairs, and a boy came down after her. Now, she only has one boy, that's me. But this boy looked like it was the son of her and her former husband. And my mom, I was sort of disoriented, and my mom told me basically, it's okay, everything's all right, just relax. And the feeling I got from that was she knew that I wasn't supposed to be there somehow. Either that I was not exactly her son, or who knows, in that world, maybe she didn't even have me there. I have no idea. But it was like something similar had happened before. And she was aware of it, but I was not. And I have no idea how to explain that, except maybe sometimes I don't just travel to other places here. I travel to familiar places, but in other levels of reality, in a way.
James, I don't mean for this to sound like an insensitive thing to say, because I mean they are quite common. If you're trying to have a baby, sometimes miscarriages happen. Do you think there's any chance that she did in fact have any loss that maybe you don't know about, and those losses not having happened somehow?
Not that I'm aware of. And so yeah, not that I'm aware of. And that is a good point. The and I was wondering about, okay, well, maybe my mind just came up with a boy as part of, this experience or whatever. But the funny enough, it sounds like it'd be that other way around. But to me, the thing that made me consider these things as being other is the way that she was just saying everything's okay, just relax. And it was like she knew me, but she didn't know me. And I stayed still, and then of course everything faded, and eventually I woke up here. So yeah, I could maybe write off the boy possibly for that reason, or someone could write it off in that way. Except then, how do I explain that reaction and that feeling I got from my mom that wasn't exactly my mom?
Right. That is interesting though, because there's so many different ways that your mind could go with those types of situations, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's and if I hadn't had so many of these experiences, I might be able to write them off easier as well. But it's just been, like I said, one every year, every other year, sometimes even a couple in a year, and it's just the oddest feeling. It's like, and I just wonder when I'm doing that, when I'm going there, is that other version of me also having out of body experiences and going to other places? Are they winding up here and wondering what they're doing in this apartment that's empty except for some crazy cat that is just acting weird? I mean,
And
also that's
that account for some people going, "Oh, my house is haunted," when it's not actually a ghost; it's someone doing exactly what you can do.
yeah, yeah. That makes me think of this one of these. Not so much the multiverse or parallel universe thing, but just the traveling thing. I remember one time years ago, I went back to that house where my cousin used to live, and I wound up in the basement, and I was just walking around, looking around, and I didn't recognize anything that was there, and I heard people upstairs talking, and I thought that's I don't recognize those voices. So I went around and up the stairs, and I got all the way to the door, and then I just stopped because I was thinking, I don't know these people, and if I just come out and see them, are they going to see me? And what are they going to see, or what would they hear if I said anything? Would I be a ghost to them? Would that be a terribly frightening experience? Would I look like myself
Right.
or not? I have no idea. And I just could not bring myself to do that to anyone. As curious as I was about those questions, obviously I couldn't just do that to people that were random that were living in their home. You know, I couldn't do that. And so yeah, I have no idea. It's these questions, and I would love to be able to do experiments with that where I could just travel, sort of set up a thing with a friend and travel to their home and appear to them, and then have them, arrange it ahead of time where that my friend knows, okay, James is going to try to come over, so that doesn't scare them as much. I would love to be able to just show up to them and be like, okay, now record what I look like and sound like write it down, like, or get a video or something. I'd love to do that, but again, all my experiences have just been at least random, at least to me anyway.
Do you find that there's any correlation between how you're feeling, how your mood is, what's going on in your life, and when these quote unquote dreams or dream visitations or OBEs happen? Is there any common denominator there with the timing?
Not that I can tell. No, it seems overall it seems random in that way as well. Yeah, I'm nothing is coming to mind. So either they happened just in at random, or they just there's been so many experiences that I've forgotten what was going on, and
Right.
at this point, yeah, I don't know. It's really hard because I would love to document all these experiences as they happen, but that would require getting up and getting to my computer and opening a file, because I'm not good with writing things down manually. I can print things out on for a grocery list, and that's about it, and that takes forever. So yeah, I would love to, or even doing like a voice recorder. But again, when you're just waking up, it's like, and with my eyes the way they are, it would take a few minutes for me to get that set up to even do that. So, and I don't even think about it because I'm just so used to having experiences anyway. And so, yeah, it'd be nice if I could have everything documented, but that's just not how that's working so far.
So before we get to the blue lights, did you want to talk about the strange dream visits that are in correlation with the house that belonged to your grandpa?
Yeah. So this is another one of those things where I sort of might have figured some things out through talking with friends about these things that are also into these topics. As I've said before, I did visit the house when my grandma was still alive before she passed a couple of times. And I think now that it was because I was thinking of her so much and wondering how she was doing on basically on her own. Not that she was ever completely on. I mean, the family really did help take care of her, but when she was still basically okay, we weren't staying there with her, so she was alone at night and things. So I had those experiences with her, with going there and seeing her the one on one of the experiences. But then after she passed, and then even after my older sister and her family moved out, I had experiences of visiting the house after that those things happened. And a couple of these were just basic. It sounds funny, basic out of body experiences where it seemed like it was the present time. It seemed like it was the same universe. All those things. It's just that the furniture was slightly different, and there was no. I knew there was no one there that I was familiar with. But there were a couple other times I had dreams of the house, and there were people in it, and they seemed to be aware of me, and it was an older couple that I saw, and but they never were afraid of me when they saw me. And a couple of times they just let me wander around the house, and then eventually everything would fade to black, and I'd wake up again here. One time though, after this had happened a couple of times, the the older man came up to me, and I don't remember now what he looked like very well. It wasn't anyone I knew, but he said, sorry, but this is our house, kind of that, basically that, and you should probably go. And I actually left the house and started walking toward home. I remember this vaguely, but also vividly, in that I started heading toward my apartment where I live now. And because I knew I could walk that back when the family lived there, I knew how to get there. And but I always thought that was odd, and for a long time I couldn't figure out what that was. But the what I think now, based on talking with friends, and what I wonder now is, was I going back in time somehow? Was I seeing the original owners of that house? And of course, one of those original owners it was an older woman that wore a blue dress with a white apron, that my cousin and I and my grandma and my dad saw there at different times, years after she had passed. And now what I wonder is, did she somehow have dreams of being there as well, and seeing me? Was that happening to her as well as me? Because again, the way that the couple never seemed to be worried about this random guy appearing in their house and walking around. And I mean, eventually they did. The older man had me leave one day, but it wasn't anything bad. And but anyway, so I just wonder, was there some kind of weird time anomaly going on there, along with the out of body experiences? And is that part of why, whenever we saw this woman, she was always just very calm and relaxed when she saw us? I have no idea, but it just makes me wonder, because I think time is more of a factor in the paranormal than maybe we think sometimes, based on everything I've heard and read over the years about people that have had experiences with time acting in weird ways as well.
Yeah, anytime there's any kind of a time slip or time travel is pretty darn fascinating. But yeah, that ties right back into how many times is someone thinking their house is haunted? It's just somebody else having astral travel time or OBE time, and it's not a ghost at all. I mean, it's still strange as all get out and cool, but not a ghost.
Yeah, I mean, and even if the original owner, the woman there, even if she never had her own out of body experience, what if she just saw me walking around there when she was alive, and then years later, or for whatever reason, she stayed around the house, and then she saw me again and realized that kid looks similar to the guy that we used to see that would just appear in the house and then vanish.
Right. Yeah, it's so cool to think
And
about that. Yeah, I wonder what would happen, James, if you really purposely tried to travel.
yeah, I don't know. If it didn't wear me out almost every time that I had one of these experiences, like if I wasn't tired from it when it happened, because that's the other thing that makes me wonder, it makes me feel like these are more than just dreams, is that it seems like every time I have one of these experiences, it's almost like I didn't sleep during that time. As far as like when I wake up, I'm still kind of tired. It's like I was not really sleeping the whole time. And if it wasn't for that, then maybe I would. But I sometimes I have a hard enough time sleeping as it is. I don't need to be
Yeah,
getting less sleep
I get
than I
that.
already do.
I get that. Yeah. I understand that completely. Believe me, I'm always like, oh, I'm so bored. I want some paranormal activity in the house. Yeah, you don't, because you already don't get any sleep hardly. So, yeah, I understand that fully, James. Well, all right. So, if you're ready, let's close out with these blue lights.
Yeah. So I've been doing my podcast now for a couple of years. Well, almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years this Halloween. And about a year and a half ago, I was thinking about doing a show with a friend of mine that I've had as a guest before on my show. A lot of my friends and I, we met because of an online radio show, and it's called Trouble Minds Radio. And actually, I'm very lucky now because I'm part of this online radio network that is based around that show. And so a lot of my friends and I, we call into that show and we talk off of the show and everything. And we were going, my one friend Derek and I were going to talk about just all the ways we've heard about people encountering aliens, whatever aliens may be. To me, I always just think alien means unknown or unfamiliar. So I don't have any idea for sure where it is they're coming from, but just that's not even the point so much of that word to me. And we were thinking about doing a show about this, and we were thinking about that in part because I'd never, other than that one experience that I had at the time thought it was just a dream, hopefully, I never really had any encounters that I could say were anything like aliens or UFOs. And part of why I never really thought about seeing anything in the sky is I'm, of course, legally blind. And I know that there are just all kinds of satellites and planes and there's all kinds of and drones. And there's so many things in the sky now, especially now, that to me, I figured, well, if I see a light, that's neat, but I'm not going to get too excited about it if it's just a light because of all those things it could be. And we didn't do the show right away. We kind of just talked about it for a while. One day, it was late summer, early fall, one year. I think Logan is digging her claws into and out of the box that she's in, so hopefully it doesn't come through too much.
She just wants a cameo.
Yeah, she has to be here.
She has to have her
show.
cameos.
Yeah, that's better than the other night. I was on my friend's show and I had just called in, and sometimes I'll just sit in and I'll be like a guest co-host kind of thing. But I was sitting there talking on the show, and she decided to jump onto the back of my chair, which she does sometimes. Well, apparently she needed some extra support and stabilization, and so she put one of her paws onto my back.
Ooh.
And guess what she did when she did that? Of course, she had all of her claws out.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very proud of myself that I did not say any bad words that would have been bad for radio because, yeah. Anyway,
That on
so
top of the high pitched squeal that would come out. I mean, those claws are no joke. They're like little
oh,
barbs at the end. They just stick in your skin.
it was bad. Yeah, it was bad. But anyway, so I'd rather have the little popping sounds, I guess, than actually being stabbed in the back. But anyway, so this one night I had decided to go get the mail. It was actually around like 3 a.m, something like that, because I'm a night owl. And but what's funny about that is normally at night I'm inside. I'm busy with whatever work I'm doing, and then I go to bed around that time or a little bit after in the morning. But this one week, for whatever reason, or weekend, I forget what day it was now, I went outside to get the mail, and I noticed a blue, not blue at first. It was more like a white light in the sky at first, and I thought, oh, that's funny. Now here I am thinking about doing this show with my friend and about all this, and I see a light in the sky. That's ironic. It's probably just satellite or whatever. Although it is odd that I can see it because I normally can't see much in the sky because of my low vision. But I was thinking about all these things as I was walking around my street, my court. It's basically where I live. They have these what they call courts, where it's buildings on four sides and then like a road to get in and out. And so I was walking toward the mailbox on the other side of the court. And as I was getting closer to the mailbox, I was thinking, wouldn't it be amazing if this was more than just a drone or a satellite or plane? Like if this was actually something anomalous. And as I was thinking that, I lost sight of this dot because there was a fir tree, right by the mailboxes. I lost sight of it for a second or two. And when I came out from behind the tree, the light had turned to a blue, like a light blue. And on top of that, I felt like there was some kind of a presence coming from it, like awareness or some kind of something there more than just the light. And I just stopped because I couldn't believe it. Here I was thinking that, wouldn't this be amazing if it was something weird? And it turned out to be something weird. And I just stood there for several seconds looking at it. And I just thought, wow, this is amazing. What am I going to do now? And I decided, even though I always say that I don't like to do this, I decided for once to try to communicate just in my mind. And so I sent out a thought of just hello. And I got a response, but it was so fast that I almost missed it. It was like it said hello back, but it wasn't a voice. I've heard this so many times over the years. It wasn't a voice, but I heard it in my mind. And I couldn't describe to you what it sounded like. But it was so fast that I almost missed it. And so I started to first of all I said thank you for, showing up, for being here and letting me see this and everything. And, can we talk more? Can you tell me more about, tell me about yourself? What are you doing here? And all of that. And of course I never got any more response that night. And I wonder now if it had something to do with language, if it had something to do with it maybe understood intention more than it understood words exactly. I don't know for sure about that, but it makes me wonder about that now with the way I didn't get any other response except this feeling of a presence there that didn't mean me any harm, that was just there, and it acknowledged that I had, said hello to it basically. And it was kind of starting. It was close to fall. I remember because it was starting to get kind of cool out, and I realized, oh, I can't stay out here all night. So I got my mail, and I walked around my court, keeping my eye on this dot as well as I could. And I said goodbye, and you're welcome. And I did another one of those things I never do, and I would never recommend anyone do. I said I'd like to meet with you more, and in person, and maybe even, closer to home, like in my home. And then I just went inside and I thought, well, that was amazing. That's never going to happen again. And for several days it didn't. That was it. And so I was amazed by it, but also I thought, well, that's probably the last thing that's ever going to happen like that ever again. About a week and a half later, I believe, around there, I decided again one night to go out and do laundry. It was a weekend. It was like a Saturday night, Sunday morning, and I saw this light again in the sky, and it was the same blue light, and it was in the same position. And this time I was going to do laundry that night, and in the haunted laundry room that I talked about before in the show, which nothing else has ever really happened there since then. But anyway, it was I just made me think of that. And so I was walking around, and I thought hello again, but I didn't really get any response. And I walked around my court, and I lost sight of the light, of course, once I got out. And I looked back one more time after I had to turn around to do it, and the light was gone. I thought, oh, well, it's out of here now. That's fine. And I turned back around to look at the clubhouse where I'm walking to again, and this light is above the clubhouse. So it somehow moved, even though I never saw it move, in a very short amount of time. Granted, it wasn't a very far distance to go, but still, and it was above the clubhouse where I was going to do laundry. And so I went in the room and I put all my clothes in and I left, and the light was still there above the clubhouse. And I started walking back home, and eventually I lost sight of the light. And I look back and it's gone again from above the clubhouse. Get into my court, and it's there and above my court again. And it did this every other time that night, like 2 or 3 more times that I went out to do laundry. And I don't know what it was, but I had that same sense of a presence there when I saw it, and same neutral, positive kind of feeling from it, nothing bad. And yeah, that was it for that night. But the next later that day, that same Sunday, I had another experience with the ghost cat in the middle of all this. And it was really quick. I was sitting here in my chair listening to podcasts, and I had my eyes covered, my blindfold on and everything. And I heard what sounded like Logan jumping onto the table where I have my TV and my video game console. But it was weird because I didn't really hear the jumping on sound. I heard just the walking around sound, like she was walking around in the back of the TV. And I realized, oh wait, I never heard her jump onto the table. And so I decided, well, I'm going to just check it out. It's probably just Logan. I probably just didn't hear. I was kind of almost half asleep, dozing, listening to podcasts. And I leaned forward in my chair and I looked up the blindfold and I look around the table, or around the TV. As I'm moving, the sounds of the walking stop. And I look back behind the TV, and of course, there's no cat there. So I thought, oh, wow, that's 2 events in less than 1 day. That's unusual. Okay. And so the rest of the day goes on. I sleep for a while, get back up that night, and I go out again that late night, early morning, Monday morning, basically, to get the mail again. And the light's there again. And as I'm walking and watching it, it starts to, it's like it expands and contracts, but not evenly. Like it gets bigger but and smaller, but like in all different places all around itself. And it's slow. It's not fast. It's not frightening. And it started doing that, and it also started changing colors to like green and red and blue and I think like a yellow kind of ish color. It was hard to tell for sure because it was just a dot in the sky, but I could still see all those things happening. And then it stopped and it went back to just being a blue dot. And I said hello again, no response. And got the mail, went back inside because I had no idea what else to do. because there was nothing else going on with it. This happened another 2 nights in a row where I went outside to get the mail and it was there. And this one night when I tried to ask questions again, when I saw it, I after I had the mail and I was standing a little ways from my door, I started asking questions and I heard a bump or a knock from inside my apartment. And I looked back and I thought maybe Logan had bumped into the door or the wall or something or the window. Maybe I was kind of hoping that she was at the window watching too, like she was reacting to it somehow. But she wasn't anywhere near the door. And so I decided, well, I better go inside and see what that noise was. And of course, I get inside and there's nothing there. Nothing is out of place. Nothing. Logan's fine. She's not reacting to anything. So I had like I think it was like 5 days in a row that week, basically 5 nights in a row that I saw this light. And then I went out again and the next day, and it was like that Friday morning, I think, or something like that. And of course, I didn't see the light again. I thought, well, that was amazing. I wish it would come back, but I could see it again, but oh well. So fast forward a few weeks, maybe a month, to Thanksgiving, around that time of year, November. My mom came and got me to go to her house for a Thanksgiving dinner. I can't remember if it was on the Thanksgiving day or not. It was one of the days close to that, around there. And of course, she brought me back home because I can't drive because I'm legally blind. And when we got home, as I was getting out of the car, I had this feeling like I needed to turn around and look up. And when I did, the blue light was there. And I was excited because I was with someone. So I asked my mom to get out of the car just for a second and look up at the sky. And I felt bad in a way to do it because she's had surgery on her neck and and like upper back and neck, I think. So she can't be looking up that way for long. So I just asked her, just look at this real quick. Are you seeing what are you seeing up there? And she was seeing a blue light, same as I always did. It didn't do anything. It didn't do any of the changes that it did the one night, and it didn't move anywhere. But she saw it, and then she had to, of course, look back down. And I had to go inside because at this point it was cold out, and I had leftovers to put away. And she left, and I came back outside just for a minute, and it was still there. And then I went back inside, and that was it until, oh my gosh, it was at some point earlier was it this summer or this spring? It was this year. I happened to go out late one night, and it was cloudy out for this last sighting. And so I was thinking about the light, but I figured I wouldn't see anything because it was so cloudy. But I noticed off in the distance toward the clubhouse in that direction, there was a patch of the clouds that was lit up, like from within or behind, or I'm not sure exactly because, again, with my low vision, I'm not good at judging distance and all those things. But there was this patch of the sky there that was lit up blue. And I noticed in this blue patch, this light, this blue light, this blue dot or ball of light appeared in that patch of lit up clouds or sky or whatever. And it was moving around. And then a second one appeared. And I sensed somehow that there were two presences there. And again, nothing negative, no bad feelings. And they were just sort of moving around each other, like in a, I guess like a circle kind of shape. And for like a few minutes or so. And I just stood there watching because I couldn't believe I was seeing two of these lights at one time. And eventually the first light stopped. And the second light, I don't know if it merged with the first light or just flew into the same position, and so I couldn't see a second light anymore. But I at that point, I felt like one of the presences had left. And that last light stayed there for a little bit longer, and then that faded. And I felt like they were both gone. And that patch of clouds, the blue light that was there, the general kind of light that was there, also faded away. And so, yeah, that's my experiences with seeing blue lights in the sky that also were some kind of presence, some kind of consciousness. I don't know what they were, but I never expected to have anywhere near any kind of like a UFO experience or UAP experience. But I've had several now.
So, James, before I ask some questions about the lights themselves, would you mind explaining to people your vision, what you can see as best you can? When it's night, when it's day. Can you just describe that for people?
Oh yeah, of course. I'm extremely nearsighted. Everything looks blurry. I don't even know, not even as far as like my arm. Like if I have my arm outstretched in front of me, beyond that, everything is blurry in general. I can see people when they're coming toward me. I just can't see facial features or eye color, things like that. I can tell if someone's wearing like a red shirt and like black, I don't know, black pants or whatever, but I can't tell you what shades of red or how dark the pants are, if they're really black or dark blue. Those kinds of things are hard to tell. I can, I have seen like just dots, like planes as just dots in the sky before, once in a great while, but it's very rare for me. I also hardly ever see stars at night. That's usually very uncommon for me. I can see the moon, but only if it's like more than halfway, like at the halfway point of getting full. If it's like just a sliver, I can't see it. When it comes to things like reading, or as I've said before, I don't read physical books in print anymore. I have to have everything magnified to an extreme degree if I'm going to look at it. And I mostly just listen to things now. And I think that's it. I mean, I can see the walls in my apartment. I couldn't tell you what color they are. And then I can see okay in the dark, like I can see shapes and everything. So being in the dark doesn't bother me at all, even if it's like sort of pitch black, because once my eyes adjust, it's never really pitch black. I don't know how to explain that other than that. But and then that makes me think of there was a thunderstorm recently that happened here, and the power went out, and even with the power out, when I looked outside, I could still see the buildings and everything, the shapes of the buildings. So yeah, but if that answers your question, and then of course you're welcome to the other ones.
Yeah, no, thank you for going through that, because I know that people are just wondering, what level of vision you have. So if you're in a car at night, right, your mom's driving or whatever, and you're coming up, I don't know, a red light, and you're still, I don't know, a quarter mile away. What does the red light, the red stoplight, look like to you? Is it just a blurry, like three blurry blobs? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's all it ever is. Even if I'm like right on top of it or right under it,
Okay.
it's all just lights, and it has to be at night. Like I can't see those lights in the daytime at all, unless it's extremely cloudy outside. But yeah, no, I can't see much as far as that goes when it's street lights or whatever. Like the red, green, yellow. I can't. I have to be pretty close to see those anyway. I feel like, but then again, it's hard to say because I never bother looking much at when I'm in a vehicle. I don't bother looking too much around. So it's been a while since I've really done that.
It probably just tires you out anyway, right?
That too, and yeah,
Tires your eyes out. Yeah.
yep, yeah.
So, how far up would you guess? It's very hard, especially at night, but how far up would you guess the light would normally be?
I don't know. I'm thinking it couldn't have been too high. Otherwise, I don't think I would have seen it. Because, like I said, I can barely ever see the lights from planes when they're in the sky. And so, see, I don't know because I don't even know. I know the words like feet and miles
Right.
but I can't tell you. I can't show you how big those are. So I don't know. Maybe a few stories up in the air at the lowest, So maybe like 50. I don't know. I guess maybe like 50 to 100 feet up in the air.
So
Like
generally
maybe.
pretty close, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I know that your mom did get a glimpse at this too. So maybe this is a pretty decent question, but do you think it's possible that there was an actual craft attached to this? Because, sometimes orbs, of course, can be UFOs, but sometimes it's just a ball of light and not attached to a craft, right? Like sometimes people will see a light attached to a craft or underneath a craft or at the corner of a craft. Do you think it's possible that you just couldn't discern an actual craft and you were just seeing whatever they have lights for? Or do you feel like it was just in and of itself these balls of light?
I don't know. I didn't see a craft, but like you were just saying, that doesn't mean there wasn't one there. If it was completely invisible, at least to me. So I guess that would either indicate the light was a lot further up than I thought and a lot smaller, maybe, or I guess maybe bigger. I don't know. Or like I said, it was hidden somehow and I just could not see it.
Right.
If there hadn't been that presence there, that sense of presence, I honestly would have written it off as being some kind of craft from somewhere, whether it was a
Right.
drone or who knows. I like I said, because like I said, I'm aware of all the stuff that's out there that's made by people that we know is made by people. So yeah, I don't know, but the way that it was able to change, the light was able to change shape or change colors. I mean, obviously that can be done through technology. So despite all the things that it did, even if it hadn't had that sense of presence with it, I would have written it off as probably just being some kind of craft doing something.
I mean, once you
Yeah.
start having any kind of a quote unquote conversation with something like that, didn't you go, oh, maybe my alien abduction experience that I could have written off as a dream, I can no longer quite as easily put it in that box?
At the time, I didn't think about that until again I started talking about all these things with friends, and yeah, they did. I've had people ask me that, and it's yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like the two were connected just because of the feeling that I got from the light and then the feelings that I got from the abduction experience. They felt totally different. But it's still, I mean, obviously, I do think there are good and bad other beings out there, just as there are people, and so it could have been different ones. If it was the same ones, then I have no idea what they were trying to do. If it was them and they meant no harm, then they obviously did not sort of have an understanding of what I was experiencing and how it seemed to me at the time. But I don't feel like it was the same thing. But again, I could be wrong.
Well, James, can you let everybody know where to find your podcast and, of course, all of your books?
Yeah, you can find the podcast at salsidoparanormal.podbean.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.podbean.com. That has all my links there. I have one of those all my links there, and I can also get that to you as well. And that's where you can find all the episodes of the show, along with links to all the books on Amazon and different ways to. I have a Patreon page, and then of course I have a PayPal link for donations. Just because there are expenses in making shows, from equipment to research materials to all those things. And yeah, I do my show on my Discord server whenever I can. I'm starting a new schedule with the recording on Fridays, and but then all the shows go out to the podcast and YouTube feeds, and then I do one or two, depending on how I feel, extra Patreon episodes per week, and those go up there. And then yeah, the book is Salsido Paranormal Experiences. That and all other books are available through Amazon. And I can, if you live in the U.S. and you would really like a signed copy, we can work that out. I will have to order more. I need to order more author copies. And once I get those, then we can talk through email or through the Discord. And of course, my email for the podcast is salsidoparanormal@gmail.com. That's also where you can send any paranormal experiences you'd like to have shared on the show in the future, or arrange to be on my show with me, especially if you'd like to use Discord once you get used to it, it's not that bad to use once you're there. I speak from experience. And yeah, so I believe that covers everything. I'm also on the Trouble Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. The main show there. That's Trouble Minds Radio. That's the one that I call into fairly often, and sometimes I'll stay on the show, and so you'll hear me a lot on there as well. And I'm on that network, and you can find me on that station throughout the day. Basically, the reruns of my shows on that station, along with several other friends that are on there. Yeah, I definitely recommend checking that out, and because you'll find great shows to listen to 24/7.
Well, James, thank you so much for coming back for your 5th ITF visit.